My pranams. My name is Rishi Nityapragya, and I have recently written this book, Celebrating Life, which is published by Penguin International. I feel the nature, the Brahman, the universe, has bestowed such limitless powers, infinite siddhis in human consciousness. Along with being successful in our relationships and professional fields, exploring this infinite potential within also is the purpose of human birth. It's a very scientific, very technical process of unfolding these layers and layers of siddhis within us. And that technical process is the theme of celebrating life. I feel every individual soul is potentially divine. Uncovering that divinity within is the purpose of human birth. And that's the theme of this book. That's why we have written Celebrating Life, 6 Steps to Complete Blossoming of Your Individual Consciousness. Please enjoy. Lots of love and pranams.
Welcome back to Studio One. We begin this session, Gurus, Heroes, and Villains, with our respected panel of speakers. Our first speaker for today is Manveena Sandhu ma'am. She's based in Toronto, Canada. She has been closely following the Bhagwan Rajneesh movement for the past 25 years, and her book, Nothing to Lose, is a result of the and much interviews. In addition to being a writer, she works as an addictions counselor in Canada. Our second speaker is Faisal Alkazi sir. He's a renowned theatre director, founder of the Ruchika Theatre Group. He has also written his father Ibrahim Alkazi's memoirs to be published in December and a stage the Alkazi Padamsi family memoir. Faisal's warm, witty, and intimate anecdotes make it an unput and downable story as well. He participates in dramatized readings and discussions on contemporary theatre. Our moderator for this session is Ms. Sutapa Basu. She is a best-selling author, a poet, author, publisher, professional, and her short stories have appeared in various anthologies like Crossed and Knotted, Defiant Dreams, When They Spoke, and Write India Stories. Her latest book, The Curse of Nadir Shah, won the Best Fiction Award at Author Awards. Her debut, a psychological thriller, Dangle, was nominated for the PILF Anupam Kher Award for debut novels in 2017. And now request Sutapa Basu ma'am to take the session forward.
Thank you, Dheeraj. I welcome you all to this session of PILF 2020 entitled Gurus, Villains, and Heroes. Hi, Faisal. Faisal Alkazi is the author of not yet released but much awaited Enter Stage Right Memoirs of the Padamsi and Alkazi family. Hi, Manveena.
Hello.
Manveena Sandhu has authored Nothing to Lose, a biography of Ma Anand Sheela, whose life story has intrigued the world. And I'm Sutapa Basu. I'm an author, poet, and I write also historical biographies. Some of them are Padmavati, The Legend of Genghis Khan, and The Curse of Nadir Shah. Now, we have all been brought together because we have written biographies. And what is a biography? A biography is actually telling history in a very special way. But the difference is here, it is usually based on the events of one person's life. Now, biographies can be academic, where the author is very strict about facts and dates. They can be entertaining, where there's a mixture of facts and fiction, and they can be motivational. I think Manveena's is motivational as well, So
Thank
these,
you.
so these are the different kinds of biographies, and we've been brought under this very intriguing title, gurus, villains, and heroes. Now, I wonder, is it because our protagonists or our protagonist is a little bit of each, a bit of hero, a bit of a villain, and a bit of a guru? While my protagonists can be called that because both Nader Shah and Genghis Khan, their war strategies are still being studied in military archives. They have been vilified for their bloody massacres, and yet large masses of people all over the world, even today, venerate them. So, what about your protagonists and or protagonist? Are there also bit hero, bit villain, and bit guru? Faisal, shall we go with you first?
That's a great one to ask, Sutapa. I think because it's tough because it's about my father. So to use the word villain is a very tough one. I don't think he fits the bill
I'm
at
sure it
all.
wasn't.
Certainly Guru. I think that's a wonderful word to use for him, and he's known as theatre guru by so many people in the theatre and cinema world in that kind of way. And hero, of course, to many, many people, the hero. But I think to the child of anyone, the parent is very rarely the hero. You know what I mean? We see them in the parents, so we see all the other dimensions of the person. We don't only see them in relation to their work or their achievements. We see them in other very emotional, perhaps, kind of terms. So I'm happy with the hero and I'm happy with the guru. I will definitely discard the villain. Okay.
Great. Manbina, what about you?
As for me, my belief is that every human being on earth has shades of goodness and malice. We all have those, dark and light shades. We're all made of these, we all have lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego to some degree in each form. So when I see, as for myself and everybody else out there, I believe my protagonist is no exception, and she has these different shades to her personality, and different roles come out at different points.
Right. If you see the documentary Wild Wild Country, there are a lot of people who do have things to say which are not very, very good about her. So, well, we
Yeah,
can say,
yeah, there are things that, as for when you talk of a guru, yes, I can say I see a lot of guru in her, and that I
right,
can talk out of my own personal experience from the time that I've known her. As we see her now, her actions speak louder than her words, and of course, though her words are very potent. And keeping in mind the time that I spent with her in Switzerland, I saw her taking care of her patients so tenderly, and she did everything so efficiently, and everything was so meticulously arranged in her care home that I could glimpse the Sheila of the yesteryears, who had at
right.
one point built the Red City and had run it. So her inner
Absolutely.
strength stays the same. And there's a lot we can learn from her life, and she imparts wisdom very casually as she goes about her day, if we have the eyes to see and the heart to feel. So yes, I see a lot of guru in her. And as for the villain, I would say that a lot depends on the eye of the beholder. Life sometimes puts us in situations where we are forced to make those moves that we normally wouldn't. It is the pressure of the situation, the circumstance, that we tend to make those moves that fall in the gray area, and we cannot necessarily categorize them as right or wrong. And I believe that Ma Sheela was put in that spot several times as a Bhagwan secretary, where she had to make those moves that couldn't be categorized as a right or wrong, or black or white. A lot of them fell in the gray area. So it also depends upon the perception of the person who's viewing her. If we want to label her as a villain, I think a lot depends upon your own perception as well. And hero she certainly is, because she fended for her Bhagwan and stood by his side and built a castle and stood on the gates of it, and she did not care about anybody's opinion and did what she had to do to serve her master. So yeah, she's heroic in every term. So she has a bit of everything, different shades to her personalities, is what I believe.
Great. You just spoke about perceptions. Now, a family memoir is a little different from the normal biographies because there, perceptions is what actually rules it. Usually, it is a narration which is based on the author's personal memories, and it's more than a literary or an art document. It's something like that, is rather than a personal legacy. It's also the story of the author's heritage that he would have inherited from the past generations of his family. And to this extent, the author's voice resonates in a memoir, maybe more than the protagonists in it. Also, there's another, I think, something strange that happens. When a person starts recalling all the events that happened in the past, he or she might stumble upon something that has had a great influence on his own life. And in that regard, I would like to put to you, Faisal, in your memoir, you mentioned about your mother, Roshan Padamsee, who did a striptease dance when she was just 19 for her brother Sultan Padamsee's play on stage. Like her, you have also gone there where others fear to tread. Your group Ruchika is known for its radical plays that have created a lot of uproar. Can you recall an incident when you refused to toe the line, and what were its consequences?
I wish there was one incident, Sutapa. There's so many.
I'm sure there are many, yes.
You know what I mean? So I think I should just talk about maybe two of them. I think 2 days after the emergency was declared, way back,
Right,
so you
yeah.
know when that is. Yeah. So we were rehearsing a play at that time by an author from Poland, Slawomir Mrożek, called Striptease. And we did that to Hindi. And we had Alok Nath, who used to act with me forever. Now, of course, vilified by Me Too in a great way. And Sanjeev Bhargav is the protagonist. And 2 days before we were opening this play, the emergency was declared. So we went ahead with our shows, as we've always done. And the play is so interesting. It's 2 men pushed into a room. You don't know by whom. And they're not allowed to leave at all. And from the setting, only a woman's hand emerges, a bit too much like the Congress symbol of that time, and starts giving them instructions of what to do. So first they put to their underwear, then they get handcuffed together, then dunce caps are put onto their head, and all the time they say, we are free, it's wonderful. It's kind of an intellectual exercise by them, that how free they are and how many things they can actually do, when actually there's none of this possible for them at all. So I think that play, within the second show of it, and the police had come in and said, well, you're not allowed to do any more shows of this. And I remember a similar thing in 1980 when we were doing the first.
Did you stop the play?
We stopped doing the shows, but I would share another incident a little bit later. A colleague of mine in the group was doing this play about the assassination of Bhutto, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And amazingly, the day we were premiering the play in Delhi, it was the lead was being played by Rajesh Khattar, who's Ishan Khattar's father. Ishan is now so famous because of his lead in The Suitable Boy. And just the day before the show, the government announced that Ziaul Haq was coming to Delhi. And Ziaul Haq is the complete villain of the piece because he was so much behind Zulfikar's assassination. And we decided to go ahead with the shows. And then the Delhi government just didn't know what to do. They had their own spies at the theater where we were performing. And they tipped off the police. The police refused to give us permission, not on the grounds of the script, but just on the grounds of some particular paper from the Entertainment Tax Commissioner had not come in time. So we moved the court. Mukul was the judge at that time, Mukul Rohtagi, who was, of course, very major in Indian judiciary. And he said he was in class with us, so he knew us all very well from school days. And he said, just present the script. So on the morning of the dress rehearsal, we presented the script. He just flipped through. He said, no chance. Don't even try. I'm telling you as a friend and as the person in charge, you can't do it. So we were waiting, of course, for this court order, which would come the following day or later the same day. So me and my colleague, Arun, who directed the play, we decided to go ahead, Sutapa, with the dress rehearsal. And Shriram Singha immediately knew. They locked the door. They said, you can't get in anybody. We said, wo court ka paper abhi tak nahi aaya, faisla nahi pata. फैसला तो हमें अच्छी तरह पता था क्या हुआ है. So we got the whole press in from the back staircase. They all
Okay.
said, Ruchika Theatre Group members. They didn't come into the auditorium. They watched the whole play from the wings. And of course, by the evening, the paper came, and then this auditorium said, we can't have you here at all. We got out of there. But in its wisdom, modern school gave us the auditorium, and we actually ran a show of the play. It was not a ticketed show, it was invited for people. But certainly, there have been many run ins. I'm just giving you two, but there have been many run ins. And sometimes, I mean, even last year, I did this beautiful William Inge's film, Splendor in the Grass, on stage. And it's a play about the very young sexual awakening of young people in their school years. And I set it in small town India. I didn't set it in Delhi, because Delhi, this is like all passe, and it's all happened so long ago. And people came up after the show and said, it's so sexually explicit. और ये तो जबलपुर में कभी नहीं होता. I was wondering which world they were living in. So very often audiences tend to be very conservative, and we have to be very cautious as theatre directors, and just do what we feel is correct and is appropriate. I did a play, for instance, on this China's one-child policy, which was there for 35 years.
I know, yeah.
So I did a play called The Dark Road, based on a novel by a dissident writer, and we did the play at India International Center, because very often my very offbeat ones go on at IIC. And I don't think IIC was very happy hosting a play on this very draconian policy of the Chinese, which was news everywhere. But they were not happy having the situation shown on stage of these family planning officials. And actually what they used to do in China is they used to inject distemper into the woman's uterus and abort the child. And then you were not allowed to even cremate the child or bury the child. They would not give you the fetus at all. So it's a very disturbing play, because the whole play is about family planning refugees. You know what I mean? Running away from the war. Therefore, in China for 35 years, it's been repealed only much more recently. In 2015, from 80 to 2015, each family could only have one child, and as in India, they were choosing the boy. The whole generation with millions of less women than men. Yeah. So I'm radical, continue to be. The new one we are rehearsing, which is shut down with lockdown, but we'll open it once we're through, is set in a brothel in Chhattisgarh, which is printed by all sides of the conflict, because all men are driven by certain parts of their anatomy. And it's an adaptation of an American play. So I've got my back covered. It's Lynn Nottage's play, which I've called Ruined. We're doing it in Hindi, called Barbad, but it's fitting. India, Chhattisgarh, brothel.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Nice area. It's also with the police on one side, it's the Adivasi on the other side. So let's see what people have to say. We are ready for it.
And we are waiting for it. We are waiting for it.
Of course. The audience is always waiting for, abhi kya karega? Yeah.
So just like Faisal's voice comes across so strongly in his plays and in his decisions that he takes about theatre. So, when I was writing my historical biographies, they were, all these people are historical figures whose stories are already archived. So I had to do it from a certain point of narration. And therefore, again, here, instead, mostly biographies, what happens is the person who's writing the biography subdues his or her voice, so that the voice of the person who's being biographed comes across. But in my biographies, it is my POV which is coming across very, very strongly, because it's my point of narration as far as that historical figure is concerned. Now, Manveena, my next question goes to you. Though you have written about Ma Anand Sheela, and she is very, very prominent and dominant in the book, there are certain places where somewhere I feel your voice has come through. So let me quote. The master had lost his way, and now where would the disciple go? This is from your book, and I feel that's your voice. So could you elaborate on that statement?
No, I wouldn't say it was my voice. It was in reference to the point where Marshila finds herself in jail after all that she had done for her beloved Bhagwan. So this was in
Mhm.
reference to that point. So
Okay.
you see, those who have read my biography know that Marshila fell in love with Bhagwan at a very tender age of 16, and from that point on, she lost herself
Young
to
age.
Bhagwan, yeah, and she dedicated her life to him. She sacrificed her all for him, and she followed him everywhere he went, and in fact, fended for him and did all she could in her power. But then there came a time when she saw her own Bhagwan, dwindling on the edge of his own ideologies and his own philosophies, and maybe due to the glare of the glitter or the stupor of the nectar, or whatever the reason may be, that he was dwindling on his own philosophy, as Ma Sheila believed, and that is the point she decided to turn her back on him, and she walked out on him. And but that was, by then it was too late. It wasn't long before she found herself in jail, and because of all that she did for her master. So that quote was in reference to this incident.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So still, you see, she came into Bhagwan's influence and she felt that he was her mentor. And that is why she went along, and I mean, she has done tremendous work for him as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes these larger than life figures also have mentors. In my book, in Genghis Khan's mentor was actually his mother, Holin, and his wife, Borja. They are the
Mhm.
ones who inspired him to create the Mongolian Empire. In a
Mhm.
similar way, Nadir Shah, his role model was Timur. So
Mhm.
much so that he decided to bring his bloodline into his family by marrying his son to
Mhm.
Aurangzeb's granddaughter.
Mhm.
Now, in this respect, Faisal, your father has founded the National School of Drama and you have carried forward his contribution to theatre. Your memoirs suggest that the real catalyst of this chemistry of both you and your father with the world of theatre and stage actually came from Sultan Padamsi's love for theatre. So, do you tell me if this congruence with the stage and this extensive Al-Qazi beneficence, would it have taken place if your father had not met Sultan Padamsi?
I think it's a great question. It's that $1 million question which we never know how to answer. Let me put it like that. Yeah. But I think sometimes it's a kind of way that people come together, Sutapa, over
Yes.
many years. And I think it was a moment in Indian history just before independence where many artists were looking for what is the way forward. What are they
Mm-hmm.
going to do, whether in painting or in sculpture? And we know so many people from Ram Kinkar Baij to so many
Yes.
people in the IPTA movement, who are asking the same kind of questions. So
Mm-hmm.
the question, I think, is very much relevant because my father at that time was in St. Xavier's School. My uncle, Sultan Padamsi, had to come back directly from Oxford. He was too young for Oxford. So actually, when he went to England, he had to hang around for a year in a school where he'd already finished his senior Cambridge. But
He was
because
a
of
genius. Yeah.
I beg your
He
pardon?
was a genius, I think, from what
He
you
was
have
a
written
genius.
about.
He was a genius in many aspects. Wonderful painter, a great poet, and of course, very major in the theatre scene as well. And academically, very, very gifted. In 1938, 39, for a 15-year-old boy to get into Oxford was a very, very big achievement.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
what he did was he was very keen to do the kind of stuff that he did, and luckily he had around him a group of kind of, should one say, almost blind followers. Kind of, he was very charismatic as a person, and he was back in India. He was at Xavier's and studying there, a big change from being in Oxford. And then as a second play at Xavier's, I'd love to share with you because I've not done it in detail in the book. He did Othello, but he did it backwards. So he took
Okay.
Shakespeare's Othello and he started with the murder of Desdemona. That was the opening scene of the play, was Othello murdering Desdemona. And then it was all as a flashback. The story came as
Okay.
a flashback. And
That's
already
really
people
different.
in Bombay, this was in 1942. People in
Imagine.
Bombay were hunted कि शेक्सपियर के साथ ये कर दिया. You know what I mean?
I know.
Now we've got used to it with, I think, with Vishal's films and with so many other
Yes.
things. We've got
Yes.
used to the idea of that we can do so many things with Shakespeare and play around with the themes, play around with the gender of the protagonists. I've seen Taming of the Shrew with the switch cast, with women playing the men and men playing the women. But that's now. And then in 43, when he chose to do Oscar Wilde's Salome, which was the play that he chose to do, the college said, definitely not, get out. Get out of this college and do whatever you want outside in Bombay. So you had to look for a theatre space. There were many, but there were those huge, huge British auditoriums that were there, which had been populated by the Parsi theatre companies. So he chose a marriage destination, this Kausji Jahangir Hall, which is now NGMA Bombay, you know, that
Okay.
round kind of structure, and did the play. And of course, with him went all the people from St. Xavier's College, and among them my father. My father was all of 18. And my father was inducted into this huge, very westernized Padamsi family. And, you know, my uncle, of course, is Alec, who passed away a couple of years ago. Again, a very big theater director in his own right. And so from there, everybody in that family was a part of it. Sultan himself committed suicide soon after, just before independence. And 3 sisters of the family, my mother Roshan and her 2 sisters Zarina and Shiraz, also married people from the theatre group. So the theatre group was very much a family enterprise. And I think if my father had not met them, I'm not sure he would have gone into theatre, because he was actually, Sutapa, very keen on painting.
Yes, yes, I know. There's so much about him. Yes.
And when he went to England, he actually went to study art. And then the course that he was doing was so miserable that he was just walking past RADA, Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, and he said, let's try this because I've acted so much in Bombay. And he walked in and they heard his voice and what he'd done. And in India, they immediately gave him a scholarship and said that you're on. But even at RADA, he found the course very wanting. Because it was dated. Anybody who teaches in a drama school tends to be 10 years before everything. And theatre changed so much in England and in Europe during World War II. So he got into a big course of self-study. And I think the wonderful part was, Sutapa, that when he was there in England, literally his bed mate, they slept in the same double bed, was Nissim Ezekiel, the big Indian poet. And the other great friend staying with them was Francis Newton Sousa. So you can imagine these 3 Indians, one an artist, one a poet, one a theatre person, and my mother was there as a costume designer. They were so immersed in what was happening and the churn in the arts after World War II. So they were looking at all cutting edge stuff. You know, they were perhaps not, he was not learning it at RADA, but he was seeing the new productions. He was seeing what was happening on the stage. He was very interested in what was happening in art. And already at that time, Picasso, Braque, all these people were old hat. You know what I mean? They were like 20 years old.
Yeah, so it was like a new life. So he was actually bringing in a new trend, a new life into the entire performing as well as into the art. Wow.
So they're able to enter that entire world and then think, when we're going back to India, because that's where we feel we want to work, at least Nissim and my father and mother, what do we do? What is the way forward? And on the ship, it's so interesting. He'd worked in English theatre in Bombay. He wrote a letter to Nissim on the ship saying how essential it would be to learn Hindi and start working in Hindi. Because he was a small town boy. My father grew up in Pune, where this International Literary Festival is. So
yes. But lovely to hear how, but he has done both. He has put his fingers into painting as well as art, as well as theatre. Equally, I mean, brought in some really sort of handed us heritages, in fact, in both these fields.
And photography.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. So sometimes biographies also leave very intriguing questions, for the reader. Like when I was writing Genghis Khan, I discovered that there was a mystery about his death. Nobody knows when he died, how he died, and where his grave is. Even now, researchers and archaeologists are still searching for his grave. And in my book, I have left that, question open-ended. Similarly, I think, Manmeena, you have done a similar thing. You've been researching for, more than 2 decades about the auto movement. You
Yes.
have had so many conversations with Ma Anand Sheila, and she has authorized your biography. But you have left the answer of a certain very intriguing question open.
Yeah.
Let me ask you that question now, and I hope you will answer from your gut feeling. Was Bhagwan Rajneesh actually murdered by his doctor Devraj?
See, if you ask me of my personal opinion, it does not really matter because it is all guesswork and speculation. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, because when I wrote the biography, as Marshila narrated, she told me everything of from her own memory as she remembers things, and it is so difficult to remember everything absolutely as it was. So it was her story that she, and I wrote down whatever I felt that she was so when the reader comes across reads it, it is as it came from her to me. And
But there
when
is an insinuation.
yeah,
That is there.
yeah,
You will
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Yes.
So, as per Ma Sheila, she believes that Bhagwan did not die of natural causes. And she believes that because she is so deeply, belief is that she's so deeply connected with Bhagwan Rajneesh that if he had died of natural causes, she would have felt something. But because she did
Oh,
not feel anything, she feels that it is her intuition that she believed that he did not die of natural causes. But now, who killed Bhagwan is not something that concerns her, be it the doctor, be it anybody from the management, be it any random person. That is none of her concerns as to who killed Bhagwan. And let's keep in mind that this question of who killed Bhagwan is one of those questions that will go down in history as a mystery that will never be solved. So I think we should leave it as it is and make peace with it, that there are still questions that will never be answered. Yeah.
so you prefer keeping it a mystery.
It will
Okay.
stay a mystery. Maybe a new Netflix series on the unsolved mystery
Yes.
of who killed
Yes.
wouldn't be a bad idea.
Possibly. Yes,
Yeah.
possibly. We can look forward to a new Netflix film on it. Right,
Yes,
right,
yes, yes, yes.
right. Faisal, you have written two biographical plays as well. Noor, which is about Noor Jahan, and you have also written A Quiet Desire. Now, Quiet Desire, it explores the relationship between Tagore and his sister-in-law Kadambari, which has had its fair share of controversies. Now, did you visualize Kadambari as Tagore's muse? And what about the muses in your life? Tell us about them
Okay.
as well.
Wonderful question. Yeah. So I think increasingly when I started reading Tagore, and for most of us as Indians who don't know Bangla, we read in translation. And of course, we read it in school and then we grumble because we all know where the line mind is without fear. And so many poems that I landed up doing as elocution pieces for modern school when I was there in the 60s and the 70s. And then much later in my life, perhaps not much later, really, 10 years later, in my 80s, William Radice, who was at that time the poet laureate of England, he was working with me. We were writing a production together on Krishna, which I was going to do here in Delhi, and I did. So William was writing the lyrics for the songs that Paramveer was going to set to music. And he had just come up with the new translations of Tagore. Which I know by themselves are controversial about how William has translated them. And I just fell in love with the kind of poetry there. And I said, who is this woman who is invisible and recurs constantly in Tagore's writing? And then when I started looking at the paintings, which, Tagore only started painting when he was well into his 60s, I saw it was the same woman, the same eyes in all the paintings, recurrently there. And then I remember reading, perhaps by somebody from Shantiniketan, that it's always the melancholy eyes of Kadambari. And then I started reading Krishna Kripalani's biography of Tagore, beautifully written biography, I must say, of Tagore. And here I said, it's the same person. So it's this woman who's there in the paintings. It's a woman who's often there in these triangular relationships that form, in a way, a crux of a lot of Tagore's writing. So there's always a husband and wife, and there is another man. Now, we all know the film Charulata based on Nashtanir, and we also know Ghore Baire, where again it's a triangular relationship. And many of the stories follow this kind of a theme. So I tried to read more, and then I found forming in my mind from the poetry and from the prose, certainly not from the plays, but certainly from the prose, I was getting these images of these three characters. Kadambari herself marrying into this Tagore household, which, you know, in the Tagore household, every day at Jora Shako, 102 people sat down for lunch. It was such a big, sprawling joint family, and so many hangers-on because they were wealthy. And then there was this young boy who was the 14th child of his mother, and therefore not very close, despite what other people have written later. My belief is that Ravindranath was not very close and not really looked at a lot. Children were not to be the focus of parental attention at that point of time, as we are obsessed with our children today. And this young girl comes in. She's a year older than him. She's 11. The brother that she's married is 10 years older. He's in his 20s. And he's already a man of the world, you know, already he's out and about. Jyotirindranath, he's renowned. There are many stories of how he himself is involved with Binodini, the actress of the day. That's kind of, you know, a legend in Calcutta. Whether it's true or not, we'll never know. So I found that what was happening between these two young kids, very impressionable years, 11, 12, 13. And you know, by the time he was 15, he was published. He had done that beautiful book, imitating the style of a 16th century poet, and everybody believed it was true, and then they found it's a fake, and actually Robi's written it. So he was very well known. That's right. He was very well known by 15 or 16, and who was his constant companion? And then I looked at those years through various biographies of him, and he was always staying with these two. So they were on this houseboat, often on the Padma. They had gone, the brother had gone to collect the taxes from the Zamindari estate. And the whole day, these two would be in the house or in the garden or on the boat together. So 11 and 12-year-olds in the garden, enjoying the beautiful, scenes of nature, the beautiful images he constantly has of light, the music that he hears of the folk music. And from that, he starts writing his poetry. And of course, his first audience is his sister-in-law, because she's
I think in one of the books it is said that she tells him, when he reads the poetry to her, she tells him, Robi, you can do much better than this. This is not poetry, she tells him.
I think it's in Gangopadhyay's book on him.
Yes.
In First Night, it's there. So I think I just then started imagining that I wanted to write something about this. I didn't know what form it would take. I didn't know it would definitely be a play at that point of time. And what I did, Sutapa, was I just started pulling together lines and scenes from Tagore's own writings. Okay? So 80% of the dialogue in this play, the speech, I can't say dialogue because a lot of it is sung, some of it is recited, is written by Tagore himself. And 20% is written by me. Okay. And then even to conceive it as a production on stage, I said I'll have recourse to Ravindra Sangeet. And as young people, we don't much like it because all our friends are boring us at parties with those 3-4 songs. And of course, Bengalis, it's wonderful. You all know over 100 songs and every Bengali knows them. And they all have that Granthavali with them to sing. It's all dog-eared and the favorites are all marked in them. But I got my cast members, some of whom were Bengali, to sing some of it to me. And I said, let's remove this dreadful harmonium, violin accompaniment, and let's use it a cappella, unaccompanied voices. And the singing in my play, I must say it myself, is ethereal. It's a cast of just 8 people, 3 of whom are the leads. It's just Kadambari, Ravindranath, very young, played by my son, in fact, by Arman, and Jyotirindranath, these 3 characters. And then there are 5 chorus members who narrate and take, I think the chorus does over 50% of the play. And they sing, they narrate, and often I've used the song, and over it, I've overlaid some very different poem of Tagore's, not a translation of that same thing. So people who sing it say it's a verbal poem, because you've used the period, the setting, the costumes, the beautiful Bengali saris, the men all in their white dhotis and kurtas and their shawls. And it's a very different experience on the stage. And I think personally, because I've written another book on Tagore for school kids to use in school with activities, I think he would have been very happy with what I'd done with his stuff.
I am so sure. I'm so sure. You should consider staging it in Shantiniketan itself, because Shantiniketan is very,
that actually there is so much silence around the story, because my play ends with the point where when the family gets him married at the age of 20, within 4 months, she commits suicide. And of course, now I know that film has been made. I wish it was a better film, personally,
yes.
with Konkana playing the role. Because Konkana is way too old to play the very young Kadambari, vivacious. She dies at what, at 21? She dies at 21,
very
22, she commits suicide. And very little acceptance by that family. As a family, were the trailblazers, so they spoke English. They wrote books themselves. The women were very accomplished, and she didn't come from that kind of a background at all. So she was always ill at ease, and everybody was a big chamcha of Jyotirindranath in any case, and his flamboyant, outward kind of personality. So somewhere along the way, this muse of Tagore's, because he became more and more famous, there's a beautiful scene at the end of Act 1 where he starts getting the letters and he sits with her on the floor of the stage and he puts out like 100 letters from fans. And he's 18, 19. You know what I mean? And we know what fame does to anybody. It's heady. The young person is very in that kind of way. And she withdraws from him. Physically on the stage, she withdraws from him. And there's a very beautiful song, I can't remember what it is, in Bangla, again a Tagore song, about what she is going through. As she sees this man, I can't say slipping from her grasp, because there's no sense of, there's a tremendous closeness. I don't think there's an element of eroticism there at all, but there's a tremendous kindred spirit, a close companionship, a very close feeling. And he notices this through Act 2. As his world expands, her world kind of way contracts, because she comes back to the family mansion in Kolkata. So Act 2 is in Kolkata at Jora Shaku and what happened. Yeah.
So maybe he no longer remained her poet. He became the poet of the world. That is where he felt that disharmony.
Absolutely. As you see, perhaps in the first play that I did and my father did when he came to Delhi, Mohan Rakesh's Ashar Ka Ek Din, where the story is with the poet Kalidas, who's one thing when he's in the village with his muse Malika, and then he moved to the capital, and Malika and all those places which have inspired Meghdut and Kumara Sambhav and Shakuntal and all those have gone, and married to the princess, to Priyangu Manjari. And then when come back to the village to find out what about his background and where did this great poet come from, he doesn't even have it in her to come and visit, to see her, because he feels he's just betrayed her in a way, till he comes back in Act 3 years later when he's left the court and feels all that running after fame means nothing. And I think that's again a very telling story of the same story where the muse is ignored and a man has gone in search of making his own fortunes, perhaps on a bigger canvas in another kind of an area. Yeah. But on a personal note for myself, the muse just walked into the room, my wife, and very, very many years. Yeah. So when I wrote Noor, I was quite clear that it was only her who could play the part. When I wrote Quiet Desire, I needed, of course, a much, much younger actress to essay the role, though she's much older than the actual Kadambari at that time. But I think she brings an innocence and a freshness, and she's Bengali, so that helps on the stage.
Lovely, lovely. We've been very lucky to listen to both of you and such a different range of biographies, actually. And though biographies do focus on a specific personality of person, but the ambience of the time period also comes through. Like Faisal, the Bombay that you have described, the independence era Bombay, it's a feast for the senses, actually. And similarly, Manbina, your book is about the Osho movement, which actually was a very, very important part of the social fabric in the 70s, India in the 70s. I remember I was a young girl and, my friends and I were very attracted by all those ideas that were going around. but it also shows, your book also shows that how one man's dream of a utopian cult in good faith can also go wrong. So biographical writings bring all these time periods alive to us. They also tell us what could be the reason for certain events that happened. For example, there was so much controversy about Padmavati's Johar. But in my book, I have given reasons why she decided to commit Johar, which was quite relevant then, unacceptable now. Similarly, I think I have given causes about Nader Shah's decision for the Delhi massacre. So, biographies help us to understand what happened in the past and why maybe it should not happen in the present, how we can learn lessons from it. So the maxim is correct. We have to understand the present, we need to study the past. So now I think our time is up and we are ready for audience questions. So yes, I can see that we have one question. So that is for Faisal, I think. Why is the English theatre hardly have plays brought out at Pune? There is asking.
I think that's a beautiful question that's being asked. And, it's only in recent years where, most of my actors were part-time actors, as all Marathi theatre, and so much of Marathi theatre and Hindi and English theatre it's largely an amateur movement that we have here. We'd love to bring, and I think now we've started traveling in the last 3 years. And then, once I said I was traveling, we were swarmed. So Hyderabad, Simla, Ranchi, Kolkata, Bangalore, Chennai, Goa, we were flooded with offers to bring things there. But certainly Bombay, Pune is next on our circuit. I brought plays many, many years ago, 4 of my productions. But carrying a play is an expensive venture. Bombay and Pune, unfortunately, are expensive venues. So whoever's out there asking that question, Uday, find us some money, very minimal money. We are very happy to travel at our own expense and stay there. But somebody locally to take charge of hosting the play and, just seeing that audiences are attracted to it. I was so worried when I went to Bangalore, Sutapa, but it was great. The person who had just gone to a festival with Quiet Desire, and he said, you bring your plays on your own steam. This theatre only costs you 5,000 rupees a night. A theatre in Delhi costs you 60,000 rupees a night. That's the difference. Okay. So at 5,000 rupees a night, and you can do a matinee and an evening show because I'm there always on the weekends. And it's because they do a play every weekend for the last 20 odd years because of Arundhati's push of that theatre movement. I run 3/4 full on every single show, and I take 2 plays at a time. So Saturday, I'm 3/4 full matinee evening. The last play we did got a standing ovation from the audience. So it's interesting to see actually that's the reality, and we'd love to come to Pune. We are all set. Our bags are packed. Once we've got vaccinated, Uday, get in touch with me. Just send me a message, find how to get in touch with me, and we're happy to come.
And my request is Kolkata and Shantiniketan. Kolkata will be without anything.
I was there with one of my plays this year and 2 years ago with 3 of my plays. Yeah, very well received. Because Bengal has such a great theatre going audience.
Yeah, we love theatre. Yes. So there's one more question which has come in.
Okay.
Yeah, any writing, biography or otherwise, including academic work, how can it be neutral, unbiased, without some personal inputs of the writer and creator? I think it's a perfect question for Manbina. Bipin Chandra Chogle, okay. So Mr. Chogle is given this question. Manbina?
Yeah, I feel you have to, I believe that one very important factor while writing is a biography is to stay unbiased, because it is very natural for the writer to feel sympathy for the protagonist or to identify with the protagonist. But it is very important that we stay apart and see it as a third person's point of view. And I think that is that's what I did while I was writing this biography. I tried to, even though I developed a personal relationship with her, and I developed this, a wonderful relationship that, we exchanged a lot of things and there was a lot of warmth, but I tried to stay as unbiased as possible. And that is one thing that comes across from every reader, says that you've tried to stay unbiased and put things as they are in front of the readers. So make your own judgments and make your own conclusions. I will stay out of it. I'm giving you the story. from the person who has experienced it, and it's for you to conclude and to judge and make your judgment. So I stay out of it. So I think it is something you have to practice and stay very mindful of, because it is very easy to get identified and to become biased.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Manveena. Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Manveena, for being on this panel. I think it has been a very, very riveting and interesting panel. Thank you, Pune International Literary Festival. And thank you, the audience. Thank you very much. Please
Thank
take care.
you so much
Have
for
a
having
good
me.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this interesting and insightful session. Next up, we have Fem Power, behind the scenes and screens, after a very short break. Join us at 12:30 p.m. for the same.